Let's look at compound interest and the compound interest formula and how we can derive it. So within this question, we're told find the final amount when £500 is invested at 6% compound interest for 3 years. So in the first year, we would have our initial investment, which was £500, and we would add on 6% of that amount to work out what we have after the first year. So in this case, we would have plus 0.06. That's how we write 6% as a decimal, multiplied by £500. We could also write this in the following way. We see that £500 is common in both the first and the second term, and so if we factorize £500 out, then we're left with, in brackets, so 500 times 1 gives us 500, plus 500 times 0.06, which gives us 0.06 times 500. So equally, we could do this calculation in one step by writing the following. This is now equal to, so £500 plus, we've got 1 plus 0.06, which is 1.06. And if we work this out, we end up with £530. If we have an initial investment of £500, then after the first year, we would have £530 if we have a compound interest rate of 6%. Now, to work out how much we would have after the second year, we would do the following. So the amount we had at the end of the first year is £530. That's what we start off with in the second year. So we have £530, and we know that the compound interest rate is 6%. So essentially, we need to add on 6% of £530 onto this amount to work out what we have in the second year. The way we can do that quickly, like we saw before, is by multiplying by a decimal multiplier. So in this case, a 6% compound interest rate as a decimal multiplier is 1.06. So we can multiply by 1.06, and so this would end up giving us £561.80. So that's how much we have after the second year. Then finally, in the third year, we would look at how much money we have after the end of the second year, which was £561.80, and then we would add on 6% of that amount to work out the value we have at the end of the 3 years. So in this case, our calculation would be £561.80 multiplied by, so since we have a 6% compound interest rate, we multiply by a decimal multiplier of 1.06. And working this out, we end up with £595.51 to the nearest penny. So an initial investment of £500 at a 6% compound interest rate after 3 years would yield an amount of £595.51. We can do this in one calculation or one step, since what I've shown you here is how much we end up with after the first year, after the second year, and after the third year. But if we look at the numbers that we have within the question, we started off with £500 and we multiplied by the decimal multiplier of 1.06. Then in the second year, whatever this value was, so it was £530, we multiplied by the same decimal multiplier of 1.06 to work out the amount after the second year. And then in the third year, we looked at this calculation, and that was this value, and we multiplied by the same decimal multiplier to work out the amount after the third year. We could do this in one step in the following way. The initial investment was £500, and we multiplied by the decimal multiplier of 1.06, since the compound interest rate was 6%. And since we're trying to work out the final amount after 3 years, we multiplied by 1.06 3 times. In other words, we can raise this to the power of 3. If we put this in a calculator and work this out, we would find that we end up with £595.51, which is what we showed was the final amount when £500 is invested at 6% compound interest for 3 years. If we wanted to work out the compound interest earned from an initial investment of £500, we could do the following. So the compound interest earned is equal to the final amount, which in this case was £595.51, minus the initial amount. So taking away 500 from £595.51, we end up with £95.51. So the compound interest earned on this investment after 3 years at a compound interest rate of 6% is £95.51. If we generalize this for any question, then we would have the following. So the final amount calculated would be, let's say, A, which equals to the initial investment. So in this example, we had £501, so we could call that P, multiplied by, in brackets, 1 plus the compound interest rate. So in this case, our compound interest rate was 6%. If we convert that to a decimal, we get 0.06. And if we add that to 1, we get 1.06. So 1 plus, let's call the compound interest rate R. And then all of this would be raised to the power of the number of years our investment is being applied for. So in this case, if we had a power of 3 here, that represents 3 years, then we could generalize this and say that the number of years is called n. Therefore, to work out the final amount of an investment that is based on compound interest, we can use the following formula. So A is the final amount, P is the initial amount or the principal, R is the compound interest rate. This could be a percentage or a decimal, and n is the number of years. And like we saw before, the compound interest earned is equal to the final amount minus the initial amount.